living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to have Delegate Carrie Delaney with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Woody.
Delegate Jennifer Boysko, good to see you.
Nice to see you too, Woody.
Now, this is your second session here, right?
That's correct.
You moved into a different building.
Mm-hmm.
Have you gotten comfortable here, and have you met your new Democratic colleagues?
I have. I've actually gotten to know them all through the year. I was the finance chair for the House Democratic Caucus, so I worked with them individually throughout last year. And Carrie Delaney, one of our new members, is my next door neighbor in our offices. So it's been a real pleasure to increase our numbers and have more colleagues who are like-minded working for the people of Virginia.
Great. Speaking of working for the people of Virginia, I understand there's a press conference yet this morning that you will be attending along with the new delegate here?
That's correct. So today is the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and I'm carrying the Whole Women's Health Act, which will repeal the medically unnecessary restrictions on abortion that have been placed on women in Virginia. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things that affect women today because, as you know, we've just had the Women's March again. Women are very engaged in standing up for themselves and have been awakened because of the federal situation, and we are responding and standing up for them.
And of course, health care and Medicaid expansion is a big issue for you and your constituents as well.
Absolutely. Access to affordable health care is of a tremendous concern to the members of not only my district, but the Commonwealth of Virginia. You know, we have 400,000 people in our Commonwealth that are currently uninsured, and if we were able to extend health care to those individuals, it would be absolutely life-changing.
Tell us a little bit about your campaign, how things went, how did you anticipate them going, and how they eventually turned out. Obviously, you're here, so you won.
Yes, thrilled to be here. You know, we did work really hard getting out and talking to people. That was really the biggest effort in our campaign, was just getting out there, knocking doors every night, every weekend, talking to people, listening to people. You know, my background, career background started in human service work, so I have been an advocate my whole career. Listening to people, raising up their voices has been, you know, my job all along, and so being able to bring that spirit of advocacy to the General Assembly is really important. So, you know, during our campaign, we walked through the neighborhoods, knocked on doors, listened to people, talked to them about their issues, and you know, ready to come here now and fight for our shared values.
Now, how do you maintain that momentum? There were 15 new Democrats elected. No one anticipated that. So how do you maintain that excitement and momentum?
I think it comes with, you know, working hard, fighting for what we believe in, and you know, doing all that we can to deliver results for our community. You know, we have a real opportunity this year to champion some causes that are of tremendous importance to the people of this Commonwealth. And I think with the new makeup of the General Assembly, we're now going to have conversations that maybe hadn't happened before. We're going to have the chance to sit down and find that common ground with our colleagues across the aisle and really make progress for Virginia.
Now, I understand that the Women's March on Washington was really concentrated in Las Vegas this year.
And I was here in Richmond,
right?
So I was unable to go, but I was at the original Women's March with my daughter and one of my friends from college, and it was an inspirational thing for so many of our new delegates who marched and decided that they couldn't sit quietly anymore. I'll tell you something else, Woody. You just mentioned that nobody saw an opportunity for us to pick up 15 seats. We did the math early last spring, and we assessed that if we could just raise the Democratic performance by 5%, we could sweep and have this result. So while I think emotionally a lot of people didn't believe that it was possible, we knew that scientifically and mathematically it was probable. And if you watch, you know, the president who is in the White House and all the shenanigans that have taken place, and watching all the people who showed up to the protest, to town halls in unprecedented numbers, starting to take action, I saw it. I saw that it was on the brink, and so did a lot of other people. I think we just all were afraid to hope for it. But here we have now people who, you know, like Delaney and others who are here, very highly qualified, ready to take action, ready to stand up for their constituents. And I think that's how we're going to be successful, is because we are going to be responsive, we are taking action, we are listening to what our constituents want, and we are trying to work across the aisle with our colleagues. And I just hope that everybody has that goodwill and maintains that sense of public responsibility for serving the constituents first, rather than putting politics ahead of that.
To what extent were you influenced by what's going on in Washington, especially at the presidential level?
Well, seeing what's happening in Washington was certainly a motivator as the campaign was going on. And for me, you know, as a mother of young children, I think that's where it had the biggest impact. You know, there were things happening in national news that, you know, my kids were seeing. And, you know, to have them worried about the direction of our country without doing anything about it, you know, was concerning to me as a mother. And so I'm very proud that I had the opportunity during my campaign to really model leadership for them and show that if you want to make a change, that you can get out there yourself and you can fight for it. Your government is accessible to you, and that the ability to, you know, to fight for a change, to raise your voice, to you know, champion things that are important to not just you but to your whole community is something that any of us can do.
Now, what are your committee assignments here at the General Assembly?
I am thrilled to be on health, welfare, and institutions and transportation. These are two big issues that affect our district and are, you know, great interest to me, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunities that are going to come this year.
Did I read somewhere that it's difficult for you to make those committee meetings because they happen on the same day and the same time?
There's a slight overlap.
Isn't that funny?
There is a little bit of an overlap now. Fortunately, the times have been shifted a little bit to make it a bit more possible to be in two places at once, but I think on those days I'll be bringing my running shoes and I'll make it happen.
So tell us a little bit more about Medicaid expansion. Obviously, that's been an issue here for the last 4 years or even longer, since the inception of the Affordable Care Act and Virginia's refusal to expand Medicaid to those 400,000 people and your constituents in your district that you are interested in.
That's right. It's a real opportunity that we have this year to expand Medicaid and make sure that more Virginians have access to affordable health care. As you mentioned, it does affect over 400,000 people in our Commonwealth. You know, for a lot of us, that's a solid argument in and of itself to say that, you know, we have the opportunity to give 400,000 people access to health care that don't currently have it. But there's a lot more that makes the argument for Medicaid expansion, you know, a strong one, and that is that we are leaving money on the table. You know, this is coming at a cost. You know, we're paying federal taxes. We're not getting all of that back. You know, to the tune of $2.6 million a year. We're losing that revenue. You know, 30,000 new healthcare jobs that could be coming into the Commonwealth if we expand Medicaid. So there's a, you know, human argument that these are people who need health care and they need to be able to see the doctor, but we also have a really strong fiscal argument to say that this is a smart move for Virginia.
And we're talking about working people, aren't we? That expansion would cover now.
That's correct. It would, and as far as our hospitals are concerned, I mean, we know in Southwest Virginia that some of the hospitals are shutting down. There was a debate in the Senate just last week about it. These are really economic issues. And it doesn't matter if we call it Medicaid expansion, we can call it the Hospital Recovery Act. It doesn't need to have any specific name. We just need all of our colleagues to come together, to work together, to find a solution, to take advantage of this opportunity that we have. $5 million a day we give up in federal dollars because people are not willing to come to the table.
And of course, at one point, the federal government was paying for 100%.
I
think now it's 90%.
Yeah, and you know, the last time we had this debate, the hospitals even agreed that they would take on whatever additional funding was necessary. I don't know how you can turn that down. It just does not make common sense to me.
Now talk to us about the Dignity Act, which I take it will be part of the press conference presentation.
Mm-hmm. The Dignity Act is, this is actually an issue that's going around the country. There are about 8 other states and municipalities who've already taken this on. It is removing the tax on women's menstrual supplies. Only women don't have a choice about having to purchase these. And I was talking to a family earlier in the summer. I've been working with a number of nonprofits. There was a family who had 7 daughters, and they had to make a decision about whether or not to go to school, because if they don't have the supplies, they can't get to school. So I have two different versions of the bill. One just completely repeals all the sales tax. The second one would repeal the sales tax during the back-to-school holiday, which I think makes perfect sense. I don't know if you're aware, Woody, that right now during that sales tax holiday, you can buy a wedding dress, you can buy a garters, you can buy all kinds of things that are not necessary for you to go to school. However, menstrual supplies are not part of that.
I was not aware
and
of that.
I believe it's a little bit outdated.
To say the least. Talk to us about some of the legislation that you are pursuing on behalf of your constituents this session.
Well, I'm excited about several bills that we're working on. One that has gotten a lot of attention from constituents especially is one that I'm working on to give elementary school children more access to recess time. We've had a lot of feedback from families in our communities that elementary school kids, you know, they get about 20 minutes a day. Sometimes it can happen at the end of the day. So you've got kindergartners, you know, first graders, second graders, all the way up to, you know, 5th or 6th grade, you know, young kids that are expected to, you know, sit still and focus for, you know, hours at a time. And we just know that, you know, children just aren't really built that way, that for them to be productive, they really need that time to get up, move their bodies around, and it really helps with increasing focus. So what my bill hopes to accomplish is that it will allow a little more flexibility for the local school boards to define how many hours are available, how many minutes a day are available for recess time, for unstructured play, and to allow those school jurisdictions to count that type of activity towards those instructional hours. We're really proud that the American Academy of Pediatrics has endorsed this bill, because there is just so much evidence out there to show not only is increased physical activity healthy for our kids, but it increases focus. And so if you're spending X amount of hours a day doing your math and your reading and your science, you're going to be more focused during that time if you have a little 20-minute break to get out there and move your body around. There's a lot of scientific evidence that shows how helpful that is to, you know, kids and their brain and their ability to, you know, to be focused and be more productive. So we're going to see not only an increase in the health of kids, that they're going to be able to get that physical activity that they need, but the mental and the learning component is going to be affected by this as well. And we've got a lot of great advocacy groups, parents that are not only in my district and in Northern Virginia, but really all over Virginia. More Recess for Virginians is a movement that's happening right now. And we're getting a lot of support from our communities, because there's a lot of families who directly see the benefit and the need for this kind of change.
What other kinds of health issues don't men get when it comes to women?
Well, I think that it seems in politics that quite often men sometimes feel like they should make decisions for women about things. So I'll just leave it at that. Can I tell you another bill, though, that I'm going to be sponsoring is the DREAM Act, which covers in-state tuition for students who are currently covered under DACA. It has been endorsed by the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce. I have the support of the Dreamer groups from all of the major universities and colleges in Virginia. It's a reasonable, pragmatic, nonpartisan approach. We know that we have a shortage of people ready to take on the 21st century jobs. We know that the workforce is not ready. We should want our young kids who are going to school in our neighborhoods to be able to have the same resources and access to education as their peers. And it's a no-nonsense issue. We have 3 different versions of the bill that are being sponsored. I'm also carrying a driver's license bill that will expand who can get a driver's license in Virginia. Again, common sense, pragmatic, reasonable approaches, increase safety. They'd be required to take a driver's test just like you and I would. They would be required to pay the fees incorporated, and then we'll know that people are ready to get to work. I have a very large population of immigrants in my community, and these are the kinds of things that my constituents really care about. Economic opportunity for everyone, making sure that we're being a fair and welcoming community, and treating everybody with respect and dignity.
Now, of course, DACA is part of the debate in Washington, D.C. as we witness a shutdown. What are some of the impacts on the state of Virginia if this shutdown continues for more than a week or 2 or 3?
I think government shutdowns impact the Commonwealth of Virginia in a significant way. We are a state that has a tremendous amount of federal contracts and federal employees, and so I know people in my district are going to be directly affected by this shutdown, economically, professionally. It's a very hard time. And so, you know, we here in the Commonwealth and in state government, I mean, we don't have the option to not balance our budget and to not finish the job. So, you know, we are here working, and, you know, I've certainly asked my constituents if there's ways that at the state level I can be of service during this difficult time. I'm here to help navigate the system as best as I can to the capacity of my office. But it is something that we need to be very mindful of as a Commonwealth, and considering our economy, that we do rely so heavily on federal jobs and the federal workforce, that it has a huge impact. That obviously the most important thing is it affects the day-to-day lives and the jobs of our constituents, but it has, you know, trickling economic impact when you've got people who are out of work, not getting a paycheck. The impact that has on the income to the entire Commonwealth. It's important that, you know, we do all that we can to make sure that our workforce is able to go to work and, you know, get paid and contribute to the economy and provide for their families, and thinking about ways as well to diversify Virginia's economy to ensure that we've got other opportunities that are helping to fuel the Commonwealth's economy as well. You know, looking for other economic development opportunities in the Commonwealth to be a place for innovation. You know, things like clean energy, medical innovation, broadening the scope of our economy so that the Commonwealth's fund isn't as reliant on the federal issue, especially as things are unstable.
Of course, we have the military. We've got the Pentagon
right.
in Northern Virginia.
That's
we
right.
have a number of military installations. We've got the naval base in Hampton Roads area.
Right.
Huge impact on the Commonwealth.
It absolutely is. Now, I understand that our military is going to be continuing work. I don't believe they're at risk, but you got to think about all of the neighboring businesses. So child care, who takes care of all of the federal workers, the vendors who provide the software, and all of those things are impacted in Virginia. I sit on the Broadband Advisory Council, and one of the things that I've been working on over the past couple of years is expanding broadband through Virginia, because while we have all the jobs in Northern Virginia, Southwest Virginia is really hurting for jobs. We need to make sure that people in Wise County have access to the same high-quality jobs and opportunities as in Northern Virginia. But again, like Carrie was saying, diversifying our economy, making sure that we have a workforce that's ready to take on the next 21st century jobs so that we can have a strong economy is a good thing. It's unexcusable that in Washington they're fighting over this and using our constituents and our residents as a prop. We're not going to do that in Virginia, and I shame them for, and I put the president at the top of that. You know, he's the one in charge, and he should be a grown-up and do his job and make sure that he is being true and honest and taking care of the communities in our country.
Extra time for recess. What about education funding in general, especially K through 12 in your district and statewide?
Yes, absolutely. That is a huge priority for our constituents, and as a mother myself, you know, that's something that's deeply personal to me. I've got kids that are just in the early elementary years, and so I've got the long haul ahead of me with the public school system here, and it is so important that we are adequately funding this. Now, I see it through the lens of a mother that, of course, I believe that my children and all children deserve access to a world-class education. I also see that through the lens of we need to use that as a tool to recruit the workforce. If we are offering some of the best schools in the country, that's going to be a way to show the business community that's looking around which locations they might want to relocate a big business to. Virginia's now on the list because we're offering world-class schools. It's the kind of place where business wants to come and where workforce would like to go. And that also goes with retaining our talented workforce. We want to make sure that the people who are here are seeing this as a community that offers all of the wonderful things that meets their needs, that we have a high quality of life. World-class schools are very important to that. And so one thing that I'm going to be championing this year, along with legislation by Delegates Bell and Reed, is access to universal full-day kindergarten in Virginia. There are still a few jurisdictions that aren't quite there yet with full-day kindergarten.
Only 3.
There are only 3, but one of them is an area that I represent, and so making sure that we're working towards getting that plan ready to roll out. Because there are mountains of evidence that shows access to quality early childhood education is a later predictor for success in life. So investing in our kids early when they're young is one of the best returns on investment that you can get, and making sure that all Virginians have access to full-day kindergarten is critical.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I guess it's an early predictor of children who will wind up in our correctional institutions as well, is it not?
That is true. Before I had service in the General Assembly, I worked for Fairfax County government, and part of my portfolio was education and health and human services. And we know that every dollar spent in early childhood is leveraged with over savings of over $6 for every child in preventive care. So keeping them on the right path. If a kid can read by the 3rd grade, we know that they're less likely to end up in jail or to have serious problems in school. But I'm really happy because I've just been put on the education committee.
Great.
And that's, education has been my #1 priority in serving. That's what my community cares about. That's what they want to see me working on, and I'm very happy to have a role in that on the committee. So that's going to be great.
What about this phenomenon that we've observed over the last few years of kids going from the classrooms into our criminal justice system?
Isn't that something, Woody? I mean, the pipeline to prison is what
Right.
it's called. And we had probably one of the most vigorous debates we had last year was surrounding whether or not you could, how long you could suspend a child. We had 2 bills, one from kindergarten to 3rd grade, and we couldn't even come to a consensus on saying that 2 weeks is more than enough to suspend a kindergartner. I know that when I was a child, I was not a Model A student all the time, and if I were the little me from the 70s here, I could have ended up, suspended for things that I did as a small child, where a teacher just sat me down and said, "This isn't appropriate. You can't you can't do that." We've lost that for some reason, and I can't understand why that is. But we absolutely, again, have whole portions of our population who have been disenfranchised, and I'm glad that we're finally talking about that. I think, if you look at what happened this past summer in Charlottesville, it's like somebody has ripped the scab off of the wound, and we're at least having conversations about racial inequity and disenfranchisement, and the pipeline to prison is a beginning start of that conversation, I think.
And I guess that implies that the use of school resource officers hasn't been as positive as it should have been. I mean, they have become police officers, if you will, as opposed to resource officers in our schools.
Well, I think we're in the midst of a paradigm shift on how we look at some of these problems. Prior to my service in the General Assembly, I had the honor of being one of the governor's appointees to the Virginia Commission on Youth. And one thing that I have heard during our conversations there, and then also with my connections to the human service field and mental health arena, is there's been a real focus on trauma-informed care. And when you're dealing with kids that are acting out and having behavior problems, it used to be the question of what's wrong with you? Why are you doing that? Whereas now the shift is what happened to you? Because these kids that are acting out, if you have a kindergartner that's having some kind of behavior where they need to be suspended from school for 2 weeks or more, there's a little more going on there. and we need to make sure that we're looking at that whole child and that whole family to see what kind of supports do we need to put under that child and around that family to make sure that we're addressing the underlying causes. Because if a child's experiencing a type of trauma, and that could be a wide range of things from abuse to a conflict in the home, but it compounds. The more trauma a child experiences over the course of their life, the more it impacts their full life. And that even goes into later health outcomes that are becoming more and more part of the conversation as we see just what an impact trauma has over the course of someone's lifetime and into their adulthood, and the later health outcomes, how it correlates to even diseases like cancer. And this is something where if we make these decisions now to shift the way we look at these issues and put the services in place to surround that child and surround their family, to give them more resilience, to help support the family in a way that can empower them, we're going to see better outcomes for our students.
Workforce development, especially in terms of our community colleges, to create more private sector opportunities to get us away from worrying about what's happening in Washington. Talk to us about that.
So we've got a lot of great opportunities this year. I know there's money in the budget that Governor McAuliffe put in that would expand workforce credentialing with our community colleges. There's an amendment that would expand that amount of money so that we could help more people. But we also have our building trades, our apprenticeships that you can actually start working, be paid while you're in your apprenticeship, and those are high-paying dollar jobs. I mean, those are 60, you can end up making $60 an hour. We need to also shift the focus from you have to go to a four-year college and a liberal arts education or an engineering degree is the only option to there are many good choices. So going into a building trade, doing a certificate program through your community college, doing more internships with the private sector and seeing more partnering, public-private partnering going on is going to make this better for us, I believe. I'm very hopeful and optimistic about the opportunities because Virginia does have a robust workforce. We need to make sure that our next generation's ready to take those jobs.
And of course, those same opportunities should apply to our military, our veterans who are returning from theaters of war. Understand now, for example, that veterans can get credit towards a certificate, for example, if they were medics in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force or those kinds of things. So those are opportunities as well in our community colleges.
That's right, and I think helping our members of the military transition from their military service into civilian life, knowing that they've been trained in areas like like the medical field, to be able to ease that transition so that their certification that they received in the military can smoothly transition to one in civilian life is going to be great to have that skill set now working in our community, as well as helping those folks transition and their families as well.
Well, we're so pleased that you're here with us today. Good luck the rest of the session 2018. Delegate Jennifer Boysko, good to see you again, and Delegate Carrie Delaney, good to meet you. Good luck.
Nice
Woody, it was so nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.